Hello, guys. I thought I would just jump on because I just got to sort out some things in the studio. But because I don't know if you've seen, but the latest reports are that basically what is happening is that Nottingham Forest are seeking legal advice to try and get the Morgan Gibbs-White deal cancelled. They say Tottenham have tapped up Morgan Gibbs-White, which is obviously completely bananas. I have to be honest with something. I've just done a TikTok about this. Tottenham have down the years accused other teams of tapping up our players, and also Frank Arneson when he was our sporting director. And I can tell you now, it never, ever goes anywhere. And Nottingham Forest seem to be the new club for complaining about everything, don't they? They've complained they got Mark Clattenburg in, didn't they, as their referee consultant because they were complaining about referee decisions. And the latest is that they're complaining about Tottenham Hotspur having triggered a £60 million release clause in Morgan Gibbs-White's contract that they put in themselves. It's completely bonkers. Sky Sports say this. Whilst Nottingham Forest currently consider Gibbs-White to Spurs to be off, it's unclear whether they can actually block the deal from happening. Now, the only thing I can think of, do you remember when Luis Suarez had a £40 million release clause, I think it was, where he was able to leave Liverpool, and Arsenal bid 40 million plus £1, I think, if memory serves me right. And the Liverpool chairman said, I don't know what they're smoking over there at the Emirates. And somehow that deal didn't end up happening. That's the only one I can think of where it doesn't end up happening. But to me, this seems like Nottingham Forest have seen what the reaction has been from the Forest fans and have suddenly absolutely panicked. But the reality surely is if the deal, if the clause is in the contract, there's not that much that can be done. So here are some reports. I'm going to read some reports as I get them. To break this down, Forest owner is upset because a player's agent told a club about his release clause that Forest agreed to in his contract. They're then upset because a club triggered that release clause and are now complaining about it. Fabrizio Romano said, Nottingham Forest prepare a complaint to the Premier League for Morgan Gibbs-White's move to Tottenham. Forest working on potential legal action as they believe Spurs made an illegal approach to the player. Well, I just did a quick TikTok about this, and I'm going to say it now. All deals these days get done first between the player and the buying club. We know this. If you keep your eye around transfer deals these days, the personal terms get agreed first, and then the buying club go to the selling club or the potential selling club and try and agree a deal. So this is nothing new. And Nottingham Forest will have been doing their deals like this as well. Rob Dorset from Sky says, I'm told Nottingham Forest consider the deal to take Gibbs-White to Tottenham as currently off. Forest consulting their lawyers over what they believe is an illegal approach. They never gave permission for talks and have cut all communications with Spurs. Unlikely they can block it, but definitely delayed. So, yeah, I mean, it's never easy with Spurs, is it? Like, we get our kind of absolutely brilliant day yesterday where it looks like finally Daniel Levy is changing the habit of a lifetime, and now only 24 hours later or less, looks like we might have a bit of a legal fight on our hands. But like I said at the beginning of this video, the reality of this, the reality is that in almost every single circumstance, the player who wants to leave the club will leave the club. And this to me strikes a little bit of the owner paying lip service to trying to show his fan base that he doesn't want him to leave the club. But the reality is, whoever was in charge that agreed to put the £60 million release clause in, that it's their fault. And I imagine it's one of those release clauses that lasts only for, like, I don't know, a lot of them these days last for what, the first 10 days or 15 days of July on a certain year. And the reality is, of course, if you are a player who has that release clause in your contract, the club will know that their agent is around the time that release clause going to tout their player about. Like, of course, that's what's going to happen. It's obvious. I'm just surprised that Forest are kicking up a fuss about it. Stuart DeGain says clause was non-disclosure until yesterday. Okay, so are you suggesting, Stuart, that basically it all happened so quickly because the agent wasn't able to say anything until yesterday, and then he said something and immediately Spurs jumped on it? Stephen King says, never nice to be the bearer of bad news, my pal. Look, I don't personally see this as bad news in the long run. I think this deal will happen. But let's see. I mean, I guess one of the slight negatives is the more press there is about this and the longer it takes, the reality is that other clubs could try and get involved. Okay, here is a little bit of news that Chris Cowlin has just broken about from the Telegraph. So the Telegraph broke it and Chris Cowlin's put it on his Twitter about the naming rights. Spurs are working towards clinching a lucrative naming rights deal for the stadium 6 years since its opening, with others adamant that funds, either from owners, ENIC, or outside investment, will be pumped into the club. It is unclear whether an agreement over stadium naming rights is close, and Tottenham declined to comment on commercial matters when contacted. So that's clearly showing that the journalists are working hard to see where this money that Tottenham are looking to spend quickly on Premier League ready players like Kudus and Morgan Gibbs-White, whether there's a reason for that to have suddenly come in. SSJ says Spurs does crazy things to people, Barnaby. Yeah, it does. But I'm pretty confident about this one. I'm pretty confident. Dakolb says, it seems very dodgy by a dodgy owner. I don't think anything will happen, just be delayed. Yeah, I'm hopeful of that as well. And SSJ says Morgan Gibbs-White will push this deal. I think he will as well. Stuart said again it was non-disclosure. Explain exactly, obviously I know what non-disclosure means, but what does that mean? Does that mean that literally his agent wasn't allowed to tell anyone until yesterday? What do you mean exactly by that, mate? I don't... So Adolko... Atagolb, says, I believe Suarez did not want to move to Arsenal too. That wasn't the case, actually. Luis Suarez really did want, at that point, to move from Liverpool to Arsenal. It was only after that Liverpool really improved. But somehow, Liverpool, by hook or by crook, managed to not let that deal happen. So, yeah, that is the only previous example of this that I can think of where the deal didn't happen. Plush Teddy says, absolute own goal from Forest for these reasons. Every transfer works like that. Exactly what I was saying. Players get asked before club permissions. Morgan Gibbs-White won't be willing to be at Forest after that. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Plush Teddy. And thank you so much for your comment. Really appreciate it. I think this will end up happening. But yeah, like you said, just not going to happen quite as quickly as it seemed like it was going to happen yesterday. Tottenham Rangers says you can't block a release clause. Yeah, like I said, I don't think you can either. But the only example I can think of where it seemingly was that Liverpool and Arsenal Luis Suarez one. Jacob Coley says Suarez wasn't a release clause. It was more for Liverpool to discuss the deal, in which case that'll be interesting in terms of the small print of what this release clause is with Morgan Gibbs-White then. Because if Nottingham Forest can find a way through their lawyers to do something similar and suggest that actually it's not a proper release clause, it was just an allowance, if you like, of a club to speak to Nottingham Forest about buying him, then maybe that's something that could properly make it not happen. But it'll definitely be interesting in the next few hours to see what happens next. Tottenham Rangers just says Gibbs-White is a Spurs player. Let's see what happens. Dakolb says, I take it if Morgan Gibbs-White wants Spurs, it's likely he'll move. As it's the weekend, I see it being delayed until next week. I'm not too worried about it, just not as content as I was. Yeah, kind of agree. Cali says, good news. Find another area. We have Kulusevski and Maddison. Keep the money for Simons and Wissa. I disagree. I really like Morgan Gibbs-White. And I really disagree with people who say we've already got enough players, creative players in our team. I don't agree. When Maddison was injured and obviously Kulusevski got injured as well, we were devoid of creativity last season in the 8 and 10 role. So I think Thomas Frank has communicated to the board that we need more options in that department, and as a result we've gone for Morgan Gibbs-White, and I am here for it. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you agree. Juz Alien says, how long is the delay going to be? Can't answer that, no idea, but I think this is the kind of thing that journalists will be all over for the next 24 hours or so we'll get our answers, I think, very quickly. Plush Teddy again, thanks for another message, says 3 things can happen. Laws change about that the club has to give permission. Nothing happens. The agent will have problems for offering him. Let's see what else you're saying, guys. Yeah, and so Ren talking about what I was bringing up. Not sure if release clauses actually count for that much. Remember Liverpool, Suarez, and the 40 million and one bid. Yeah, but somebody else in the comments, Seren, saying that wasn't actually in the end an official release clause. It was more a kind of clause to say that a club could speak to Liverpool about it, and that's where, of course, we got the famous quote from John Henry about Arsenal. What are they smoking over there at the Emirates? Cali says, after Wissa, a DM, a Destroyer, who's the best, Julmand around 40 million, Palini 80 million, Rios 20 million, Berger, Fulham 25 million, Friend at 15 million. All right, they're good options, I guess. Hamden says, wait, are we getting Gibbs-White or not? That remains to be seen at this point. I think if Morgan Gibbs-White really wants the move, then this will definitely happen. But Nottingham Forest are very pissed off, to say the least, and are trying to make it very difficult. But it'll be interesting to see. I think the journalists will, over the next 24 hours or so, really get a proper idea. They'll be speaking, realistically, Morgan Gibbs-White's agent will right now be speaking to journalists about the reality of what that release clause is and what that release clause says. So the public will get that very soon, I think, in the next 24 hours. That's how I feel about it. At a Colbask, is there any benefit in not having a stadium sponsor? Daniel Levy has spoken for the last 5-6 years about the reason for not having a stadium sponsor is that the deal that he wants has not been reached by any sponsor, and at the moment he feels like it's better for the brand of Tottenham Hotspur for the stadium to be called the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium rather than sell the naming rights for a deal that he is not exactly happy with. LTBS, I completely agree with this. Forest owner throwing his toys out of the pram. That's exactly what it is, and he consistently does it, doesn't he? He's been doing it for the last... He's really, really passionate and confrontational, the Greek Forest owner. And this seems to be just another version of that, another example of it. Dark Sunji 21 says, then did Forest sell Elanga before Newcastle talked and agreed with the Elanga camp? That's true, isn't it? No, wait, I don't think Elanga was a release clause. I think Forest and Newcastle ended up finding their way to a £55 million agreement. That's the difference there, I think. Blackie, that James Black. Hi, mate. How are you? He says, won't stop the transfer. They won't keep a player who wants to leave, especially when the club has broken a contractual obligation. Spurs probably have more grounds for legal action if this is blocked. Yeah, I think that's all really, really smart stuff, James. And yeah, like I said it at the beginning of this video, but I'll say it again. Tottenham have actually been in Nottingham Forest position before. Frank Arneson, when Chelsea poached him, we just appointed him as our sporting director. This is in the early noughties. Chelsea then came and poached him within months, and Tottenham ended up getting £5 million, I think, out the courts. But Chelsea did get Frank Arneson. And then I'm pretty sure with Dimitar Berbatov as well, there were suggestions. And Robbie Keane, when Robbie Keane went to Liverpool as well, there were suggestions that the buying clubs, Liverpool and Man United, had tapped up those players. But back then, and even back then, those buying clubs still got those players. But back then, it was kind of more frowned upon. But these days, as we all know, when we watch transfer dealings unfold in the press and with Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein and whoever, we all know now that the clubs do not get involved with each other until the very last moment. It is the player and the player's representatives talking to the buying club about personal terms. Do you want to come? Will you accept this offer? When they accept that offer, we then hear about it from Fabrizio Romano, don't we? From David Ornstein. Personal terms have been agreed. Now club to club. In fact, we heard it yesterday with Johan Wissa, didn't we? There's now club-to-club contact between Brentford and Tottenham. Wissa is keen to move to Tottenham Hotspur, etc., etc. So Nottingham Forest knows how this works. They work the same way when they're buying players. And the reality is, I think the owner is cacking himself, basically, because he's just lost two of his most important players in a week, and the fans are in absolute uproar. So he has to make a show for his fans that he doesn't like it. And so he's leaked this thing. They're looking at legal stuff. But the reality is, Tottenham are just doing what all the clubs do at the moment. That is the reality. And Hamden agrees, says, we've triggered the release clause, so there's nothing they can do about it. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Yeah, Eric saying, same owner who ran on the field and went crazy. That's right. He went crazy at his own manager, didn't he? He started having a go at Nuno on the field. And he appointed Mark Clattenburg as Nottingham Forest's referee consultant. This guy is like, he needs to have a bit of a word with himself. He's way too passionate and in the moment for the Premier League. The Premier League is so seen around the world. Like every story from the Premier League just gets absolutely maximized around the world. You cannot be making like in the moment decisions like that. to go onto the field and to have a go at your own manager or to threaten legal action because a release clause has been triggered when you put the release clause in, mate. You put the release clause in. So, in reality, the guy is making himself look like a bit of a fool, I have to say. Plush Teddy says, I think other clubs will be behind Tottenham. That is an interesting point. I'm a bit nervous now that with this delay, other clubs, Man City were interested in him. Maybe a Newcastle might look at it and say, oh, well, we'll try and match the release clause too. But from everything we heard yesterday, Morgan Gibbs-White wants to come to Tottenham Hotspur. The reports were that Thomas Frank has absolutely sold his project and his vision to Morgan Gibbs-White and told him how important he will be within that. So I do think this is most likely to just be a delay. And then listen, if they want to play something out through the courts afterwards, good luck. I think Daniel Levy will, I'm sure will win any courtroom battles when it comes to stuff like this. So let's see just some more reports coming out. Matt Law has said Ibasuma is one big name that is expected to be sold from Spurs this summer. So that's a bit of a separate story. Let's see what else is coming out about this Morgan Gibbs-White news, though. Just a lot of people suggesting this is all posturing. I completely agree. I think there is a lot of posturing going on. Just seen some other examples where the Forest owner has thrown his toys out the pram. It was this season, wasn't it, where Nottingham Forest considering legal action against Sky over Gary Neville comments after he crossed the line. Nottingham Forest question VAR's integrity, consider legal action after Everton loss. Marinakis launches 2.1 million defamation lawsuit against Greek club rival in London. So basically Marinakis he's got previous. He does this all the time. But I'm going to say this. Did he sue Gary Neville? Did he take him to court? No, he didn't. So, and I'm just seeing some Liverpool fans here saying Forest have presented themselves as a very strange club over the past few years. Yeah, and it all, like as ever, everything trickles down from the top, doesn't it? And Marinakis clearly just a very passionate bloke who doesn't like it when he doesn't get what he wants. Wesley says Forest small club crying like always. Stuart saying they're saying Tottenham were pre-notified of the clause prior to the date. Captain Mannering says nasty owner, look at what he did to Nuno, and Edu is now there. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to talk about, isn't it? Edu is now there. He's moved from Arsenal. He was obviously offered by Marinakis an absolutely obscene amount of money, because to move from being basically the player, the man, in control of all the sporting decisions at Arsenal, and then leave to go to Nottingham Forest, like how much money must have Edu been offered for that to happen? And I honestly think that's a bad look for Edu, but he's now across some of this stuff. He's probably got Marinakis in his ear saying, leak that we're going to sue them about Morgan Gibbs-White. And I think it's just embarrassing. I think it's just completely embarrassing. John Ag 2K says Suarez's contract allowed offers of over 40 million, hence Arsenal offering 40 million and £1. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. That's the only one I can remember where it actually seems similar, but somebody in the comments was saying that was actually not an official release clause triggered. It was a clause where you're able to talk to the club. Thank you for your super chat, Parashar. Really appreciate that, mate. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Loving all of this, all of these comments today, guys. Loving all the support. Thank you so much. Over 900 of you watching at the moment. If you're not already a subscriber to my channel, do press that subscribe button. It should be down there for daily Tottenham Hotspur transfer news and all the news and views coming out of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Thank you so much for this. I'm not unduly worried about this Morgan Gibbs-White thing. I think it will end up happening. I think the key point is that Morgan Gibbs-White wants to come to Tottenham Hotspur. David Walton asks, is Alan Sugar involved? Brown envelope again? Let's see what happens there. I don't think so. Alan Sugar, though, is still a minority shareholder in Tottenham Hotspur. Anthony Say says, release clause is a secret. First time I've heard that in football. And Adakob says, I love the idea of Morgan Gibbs-White as Maddison acts as sort of a model for Gibbs-White to further grow into. I believe they're on similar levels and learning from Maddison can take him up to the next level. Also, Thomas Frank. I agree with that. Really great comment. Thank you, Adakob. Completely agree with that. Got another super chat in here from Lumpy Battery. Thank you so much, Lumpy. We're going to smash it this season, boys. Keep it up, Barnaby. You're destined for #1 Spurs content channel. I appreciate that, mate. Great blend of fan exhilaration and tempered analytics insights. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate that. What a legend. Really loving what you guys are coming up with in the comments. Just before I keep going with the comments, guys, I will tell you a little bit of the quotes from Mohamed Kudus, he said, the most important reason why I came here is the project and how the manager sees I can develop under him, where he's come from and seeing the amount of talent that he's developed to become great players. So Mohamed Kudus likes the idea of Thomas Frank improving him in the same way he improved the likes of Ivan Toney and Brian Mbeumo. So, yeah, that's cool. Some good stuff from Mohamed Kudus yesterday. We've got one over the line in Kudus, and we're going to just maybe have to be a little more patient before we get Gibbs-White over the line. But like I said earlier, it's never easy for Spurs, unfortunately. It never happens quickly. Okay, just another quote from Sky Sports, Michael Bridge. Nottingham Forest believe there's been also a breach of confidentiality around Gibbs-White's release clause, as Tottenham's bid was pitched at exactly that level. What do you expect, mate? What do you expect? If you allow a release clause to be put into your player's contract, their agent is, of course, going to talk to other clubs about it. That is the reality. It's just mental. I'm sorry. It's just mental that you're suggesting that doesn't happen all the time. It was going to happen all the time. John Bostich says, Kulu and Madders are not fit for long enough time, so Morgan Gibbs-White is necessary. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a really good rotational option. Charlie Vale, thanks for your comment, mate, says, yeah, this is annoying. Forest seems salty with the complaint. Chris Offord, good point here. Surely this would have happened yesterday. Yeah, it probably did all happen yesterday, but things take a while to get into the public domain, don't they? So it'll be interesting to see what happens next, that's for sure. All of the, I'm checking my phone all the time because all of the journos will be constantly on this, that's for sure. Let's just see. Ebony Shotgun says, sorry, I missed this. What happened to the Morgan Gibbs-White deal? Yeah, for people jumping on late, basically Nottingham Forest are trying to suggest that the deal is off because Tottenham have tapped up Morgan Gibbs-White, and they are suggesting that somebody has broken the non-disclosure agreement about Morgan Gibbs-White's release clause, and it's quite pathetic. It's the Nottingham Forest owner Marinakis throwing his toys out of the pram, as he does regularly, and I'm sure it'll be okay. But for now, it makes a great story for all of the broadcasters, that's for sure. Just going back to the potential stadium naming sponsor subject, Plush Teddy says, I would accept a naming sponsor from Saudi, but if we would slowly be bought, I couldn't really accept that. I mean, that would be a slippery slope. I think if we were sponsored, if the stadium was sponsored by a Saudi company, then I think it's a slippery slope towards Saudi ownership at that point. Dave Slater, great surname, mate. How did Spurs make an illegal approach? Happened in a few hours. How about Romero getting daily calls from a manager that wants him? Great point. Great point. Like I said earlier, this is how deals get done all the time now. Marinakis knows this. That's why it's just paying lip service. He's just trying to show his fans. He's trying to show the Nottingham Forest fans that he is going to do something about it when he knows he can't. Once again, this is his raison d'etre. This is what he does. He did it with Gary Neville. He's done it loads of different times. He went onto the pitch to shout at Nuno Espirito Santo. The guy is Greek. He's Mediterranean. He's passionate. But it doesn't work like that in the Premier League. And Morgan Gibbs-White and his agent know that. Tottenham Hotspur know that. I'll tell you who knows it more than anybody else. Daniel Levy. This is not his first rodeo, Daniel Levy. He's probably laughing in his big armchair, stroking his cat with his cigar at the moment, going, mate, you are an amateur, Marinakis. You've only been in this game in the Premier League a couple of years. Mate, I've been doing this for 23 years. You've got nothing, pal. You have got absolutely nothing. And I think this will be proven in the end to be just a blip in the Morgan Gibbs-White signing, which will happen very soon, I'm sure. Levi says, Morgan Gibbs-White a week ago was happy to stay at Forest, even took part in a photo shoot for the new kit launched yesterday. So suddenly changed in a matter of hours, you can keep him. He's not wanted anymore at Forest. Okay, Levi, well, thanks for coming on. Actually, really pleased that we've got a Forest fan on here to give their feelings on it. And I think that's a really good point. I think Nottingham Forest fans, similar to West Ham fans, once Kudus said he wanted to join Spurs, they won't want him to play at Forest. So at best, what is Marinakis going to be hoping for here? Maybe they can get a few more million quid out of Spurs. He won't. He won't, because Daniel Levy will have seen the fine print on this release clause of Morgan Gibbs-White's contract. So this is going to go absolutely nowhere for Nottingham Forest. But listen, Levi, I really appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. Another Forest fan here says, I'm a Forest fan. Marinakis has had backlash from fans, and now he's pulling the plug, throwing his toys out the pram with no backups ready. Yeah, so it's not all supportive towards their chairman, and we know how that feels, don't we? Because a lot of Spurs fans really don't support Daniel Levy. Well, ironically, probably until yesterday, when suddenly a lot of Spurs fans were like, Daniel Levy has finally changed. I've seen so many social media posts that are like, what's happened to Daniel Levy? Has had a lobotomy? Has someone stolen his wallet? Is he out of action? So NFFC Nugget, thank you so much for your comment, and I appreciate how sometimes it can be frustrating with your owners. I think the reality is, if I were Marinakis at this point, I'd say, damn it, we shouldn't have put that release clause in. We've lost Elanga. We've got 110 million pounds to spend. Get about spending it, mate. Forest have done really well in the last few years, buying brilliant players. I'm thinking particularly Morello and Milenkovic at the back. Unbelievable footballers. So use your scouts, use Edu, and invest this in the club. Invest this back into the team, and you can grow in the long term. The only fear I have about Forest, and they did play brilliantly yesterday, but their way of playing is so one-dimensional that I fear that clubs this season won't fall for it, and it could be difficult. So maybe what Forest should be doing now is trying to use this money that they've received from Newcastle and they will receive from Spurs for Gibbs-White, reinvest it into a team in the hope of kind of changing a style of play a little bit so you can grow into the Premier League long term, and don't let it be a kind of flash in the pan season, which we've seen from clubs before. I remember, back in the early noughties, late 90s, early noughties, when Ipswich had an amazing season, nearly got into the UEFA Cup as it was, Europa League now, with Finidi George there, and Marcus Stewart, and then they were relegated not long afterwards. So Forest should reinvest this money in a way to make sure that it's not a flash in the pan, that they become Premier League regulars for the next 20 years. That's how I feel about it. Mark says this: it all seems a bit messy now, but if he wants to go, then no point Forest trying to make it hard for him or keep him, etc. I think probably anybody who's watched football for years and been through loads of these kind of transfer tittle-tattle experiences, clubs threatening legal action, would agree. The reality is no legal action like this ever really works. It just doesn't. It really doesn't. The Erg says it's not off, just Forest mouthy owner getting out of his pram again. Yeah. Truth be told agrees, says the deal is not off, lol, delayed. Plush Teddy says if it's a similar situation to Suarez, it would make sense if you think about that 70 to 100 million we were quoted for City. Okay, let's see what else people are saying. Williams says Forest owner deserves respect. The man wants better and he shows it openly. I mean, yeah, look, that's one way of looking at it, but I just don't think there's any evidence down the years of this kind of behavior working in the Premier League. I really don't. But happy for you guys to disagree. Let me know in the comments. Anthony says this: so players not allowed to talk to anyone for their move. Is it how the football world works? It always was back in the day. Back in the day, you used to have to agree a fee with the manager and or chairman of the opposition club that you're trying to buy a player off, and then you could talk to the player. But the reason that has changed down the years actually is because everybody in the game knew how prevalent tapping up was. So basically it became something where it's happening, and therefore you're not going to throw your toys out the pram and threaten legal advice. You're just going to say, okay, well, you work that out, and then we'll see if we can work it out with the club. That's just how it goes. Richard says, rather than getting 60 million for him, it may cost them 60 million in damages for failing to adhere to their contractual obligation. I mean, that's an interesting point. That seems like that would be taking it a long way down the road. I mean, all we've heard so far is that Forest have said they are seeking legal advice. It may well be that the legal advice they hear is you haven't got a leg to stand on. But like I've said a few times on this live stream, which I'm really enjoying, by the way, the reality is that Nottingham Forest owner Marinakis feels the need to show his fans that he's not happy about this and that it wasn't his choice. And I think that's what this is really about. I really do. Parashar, I've said this a few times. I'm now worried about clubs having time to swoop in because of this delay. Yep, that could happen. Simon says, if Spurs have agreed terms with the player before triggering clause, they're in the wrong. But that's just what happens now, mate. It does. Just go through David Ornstein or Fabrizio Romano's feed on X, and you will see that players talk to the buying club first. It all gets agreed, and clubs know it, and they don't have a problem with it. That's just the way it works. It really is. Ulrika Johnson, it's lovely to see you, Ulrika. You surely cannot be the real Ulrika Johnson, but I would love it if you were. But I don't remember Ulrika Johnson being a Spurs fan. The deal is done. The only way it's not done is if there's no release clause. Yeah, I completely agree. We will find out very soon, as the journalists will be digging to find out the fine print on the contract of this release clause of £60 million for Morgan Gibbs-White. My hunch is that it will be one of those release clauses that is like Morgan Gibbs-White can sign for another team if they trigger the release clause of £60 million between the dates of, let's say, the 10th of July and the 15th of July 2025. And the reality will be that the agent will have made clubs aware of that. He will have made Man City aware of it. He will have made Tottenham aware of it. And Man City will have gone, okay, actually, we can't take Morgan Gibbs-White now because we've just spent all this money on, some of those numerous players that they bought in January in this window. And Tottenham have come and said, oh, actually, I think Morgan Gibbs-White worked really well for Thomas Frank. And they've gone, bang, £60 million, told the press, told Nottingham Forest, agreed personal terms with the player. And now Forest are like, they've seen the reaction of Nottingham Forest fans. They've thrown their toys out of the pram, Marinakis in particular. Edu, I would imagine. Edu, from everything I've seen of him, having watched the Amazon documentary at South Woolwich, Arsenal, Edu is probably being like, listen, mate, Marinakis, this is not how it works. Chill your boots. Let's just look into reinvesting this money. But, I'm hypothesizing based on not knowing these people myself. Ryan Ellis says he wants City to come back in and pass him an extra few mil on the sly. Yeah, talking about Marinakis, you might be right there. But City, even if that was the case, City would be like, well, not going to pass you any more money on the sly because it's £60 million. And that's what's in the contract. Hamdan says, the Forest owner, Marinakis running around Nuno, reminded me of that scene from Ted Lasso. Yeah. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Yeah, Aaron Dam agrees. Looks like a power show from Forest to their fan base to save face. Completely agree. And Richard says, fancy wanting to keep a player who wants to go, can sue you for anything he might lose through failure to meet the contractual obligation. Lol, big loss or 60 million in the bank. Yeah, really good points. Simon saying, breaking on Sky Sports News, that Morgan Gibbs-White was not given permission to speak to Spurs before clause trigger. So how can Frank sell the project before? Like I said, though, that will all have been leaked from Nottingham Forest. This is the reality of all signings and all interest. Players are talking to other clubs all the time through their agents. And it's not legally a thing that Forest will be able to say, because in a court of law, Morgan Gibbs-White would say, oh, well, I didn't talk to anyone, because he literally won't have talked to anyone. It will have been all through his agent, and even if he did speak to Thomas Frank on the phone, they won't be able to prove that. It's never, ever going to happen. It's very funny. It says Karen Marinakis. Is that his name, right? It can't be, can it? He can't actually be a genuine Karen, surely. Ryan Ellis in a little bit of a 1970s misogyny here. I also consider legal action every time my wife irritates me. Very good. Jonathan says, embarrassing by Nottingham Forest. Captain Mannering, interesting, says Edu is the problem, not the owner. I mean, I can't agree with that, because the owner of Forest has been doing this since way before Edu went in there, hasn't he? Alistair Gold has just posted, one normal day is all I asked. Invert the Wing has said they're trying to outlawyer a club with Daniel Levy. That's kind of exactly what I was alluding to, wasn't it? I just don't think that's going to work. SSJ says, Forest looks sad. You would forget they have a Champions League trophy. They do. And I'll say this about Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are a big club. They're a big traditional club. They won the European Cup under Brian Clough. I like Nottingham Forest as a club. When I was growing up, Nottingham Forest they beat Spurs all the time. When Clough was still manager, they had the likes of Roy Keane, they had Nigel Clough, they had Stuart Pearce, they had Mark Crossley. They were a brilliant, brilliant team. Brian Laws, they were great growing up. And I often use Nottingham Forest as an example to Spurs fans who are angry and hate Daniel Levy, of how quickly a club can drop off from the top if you don't treat the club well, and you don't deal with the financial side well, and you don't manage the club well. And Nottingham Forest went down and were in the Championship for a number of years, and they've come back up and they've done really well. But the reality is now that you have to get used to kind of the reality of, I hate to say it, but it's like vultures in the Premier League. It is at the elite level. The Premier League is like vultures, and vultures will sniff around your players, and agents know that. And agents, of course, just trying to make a pretty penny, make a tidy buck. And listen, this isn't anything that Marinakis and Edu don't know. That's where the surprise is here, as far as I'm concerned. Simon Farman says Forest would only get £10 million profit after paying a sell-on clause. That would have to be a mighty huge sell-on clause for them only to make. Oh, I guess £10 million profit. What did they pay for Wolves for Morgan Gibbs-White then? Yeah, I guess they probably paid. What did they pay? Maybe 30, something like that. I'm not sure. Dark Sung says, isn't this the same owner who cried about Palace playing Europa League? Yes, probably. Exactly. Emperor Von Donut says, whoa, what's happening? I'm sure you know by now, but in case you're coming in late, guys, basically Nottingham Forest are claiming that Tottenham have tapped up Morgan Gibbs-White, that his release clause in his contract was part of a non-disclosure agreement that was broken, and they are seeking legal advice. But my personal opinion, and I'll keep stressing it, is that the deal will end up happening, that Morgan Gibbs-White wants to come to play for Spurs, that Nottingham Forest know that they don't really have a leg to stand on legally, and that really it's just the owner trying to show the Nottingham Forest fans that he didn't want this to happen and that he's sticking up for them. And to some degree, you can understand that. Mark NFC says, Forest fan here, never knew there was a clause. It's strange. Yeah, I mean, if it was under a non-disclosure agreement, why would you know until suddenly that non-disclosure agreement doesn't exist anymore, and the agent obviously touted him around clubs. That's the reality. That is the reality. No expert in this chat knows whether rules were broken by Spurs or not. Not one of you. Forest complaining again. How many Spurs fans stood up for Forest when they had points deducted? I mean, that's an interesting one. I didn't stand up for Forest over it, because why would I? I didn't want Forest to have points deducted, but I personally do think as a club in Spurs who runs the business side sustainably and doesn't cheat in the same way that Chelsea cheat and Man City have cheated, I want PSR and FFP to be adhered to, because Tottenham do adhere to it. So that's why I didn't stand up for Everton or Nottingham Forest, but that's because they broke the rules. Simple as that. And if Tottenham broke the rules, I'd expect Spurs to get punished as well. KK agrees with me. I think Forest just want to save face against fans and show they're doing something. It's a PR stunt, which, to be honest, is fine. Doesn't change anything. He's coming. Yeah, I think you're probably right. And Seren agrees, says, agree, it seems likely this is a show to put on to appease angry Forest fan reaction. There wasn't a hint of any legal challenges yesterday. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. They didn't happen yesterday. What else have we got here? Interesting from Stuart here. CAA base and Stella working together. Is Morgan Gibbs-White another CAA base player? Tottenham have a really great relationship with CAA base, who are an agency who have a lot of players on their books who Tottenham have signed. Ange Postecoglou was on their books as well at one point. So that's an interesting thing. Let's see what happens. Max Harris, good, interesting point. Don Fabio with those illegal workings again. I don't think Don Fabio will be involved in this one, but who knows? He might be in the background. This is Fabio Paratici, by the way. He might be in the background on his iPhone headphones. Who knows? Let's see what happens. Dave Red Dog agrees with a few of you. I think this could inspire other clubs to start bidding for Gibbs-White. Could increase the price. No, it could only increase the price if he doesn't have a £60 million release clause. If he does have a £60 million release clause, then Forest don't have a leg to stand on, and Tottenham will buy him for £60 million. It will be as simple as that. And I've no doubt that Ali Gold and Jack Pitt-Brook and all of the guys on the beat journalists, the beat journalists for Tottenham Hotspur will be trying to find this out, and we will find out in the next few hours. Gary says this, Barnaby, never a dull day being a Spurs fan, is it? Lol. Just so much drama. Yeah, but listen, there's no football at the moment, is there? And let's face it, nobody's interested in the Club World Cup. So transfer drama is all we can live by. And yesterday was one of the best days. Today, I still feel confident this will go through. What I don't want it to do is to kind of put off any next deals that we had. If we wanted to get the Gibbs-White deal done today, then maybe they wanted to do other deals early next week. And I don't want that to have to kind of be pushed back. But I'm still pretty confident that Morgan Gibbs-White will become a Tottenham Hotspur player in the next week or so. Pierre Lindqvist, exactly what we've been saying here. It surely is a smokescreen for Marinakis to save some kind of stature. When a buyout clause is triggered or will be, you can talk to the player and make a deal with them. Exactly right. Thank you for your comment, mate. Really appreciate it. Guy Thompson says, let Forest dry their tears. Pierre says, NDAs do not include a buyout clause. It's not a secret as it's in the contract. That's interesting. Roundhouse, we've got a little bit of Forest versus Spurs here. The only tears I see are from Spurs fans on this forum. I don't think any of us are really crying, mate, to be honest. I think we're all pretty confident. Emperor Von Donuts, thank you for your comments. Says, what's the point of a release clause if it's confidential? A club's just supposed to fire off multi-million-dollar deals, blind praying it's as close to the release clause as possible. That's a really interesting point. Because maybe the answer is maybe. But it would be naive to think that the clubs who agree to a release clause in their player's contract, it would be naive for any of them to think, well, of course, or to not think, of course, the agent is going to tell other clubs during the period of that release clause. That's just the way it works. And that's why that's why, as far as I'm concerned, this is just paying lip service to it. Matt93 says he's still coming. It's just their owner having a fit. Yeah, he is having a fit. Ez says, Bubba actually, when we won the UEFA Cup last, there was no Champions League. We've been Champions Europe the same amount of times as you, lol. Okay, you're talking to someone else there. Sorry, I thought saying Bubba you were talking to me because it's quite close to my name. If Spurs approached the player before meeting the release clause with Forest, then Spurs broke the rules. Simple as that. That is from Sly1313. I think that, listen, I think that would be very hard to prove, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. Denver says, just get Eza, please, Tottenham. I'm afraid to say I think Eza is going to go to South Woolwich Arsenal, unfortunately. Going back to the possibility of a stadium naming rights deal, everyone Donut suggesting the Qatar Airways Stadium. I have wondered for a long time whether that will end up being what the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is called. If you look at the reality of Etihad and the Emirates, and if Qatar really do want to get involved in a Premier League football team, then you could certainly see it being the Qatar Airways Stadium. Let's see what happens. Jack says, only Spurs could possibly muck up a here we go. That's true. Fabrizio Romano has a pretty high success rate with his here we goes. And now Tottenham have found a way, or certainly Nottingham Forest have seemingly found a way to stop it from happening for now. But I don't think it'll happen for long. I don't think it'll stop for long. Omni Caliber says, this guy knows nothing about Marinakis. Well, I know what I see about Marinakis in terms of that he's consistently threatening legal action to pretty much everyone. So, yeah, I don't know him. I can't claim to know him. But like I said, like when you get to the elite level in the Premier League, this is not how chairman of Premier League clubs act. It's just not. And it does, I'm afraid, it makes Nottingham Forest look small fry. Just like him running onto the pitch and having a go at Nuno Espirito Santo made Nottingham Forest look small fry. It's embarrassing, and it's going to have to stop. It really is, because, yeah, fans, not just Spurs fans at this point, but lots of people laughing at Nottingham Forest owner, really. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Shermanator says they have zero legal basis to stop the deal. The worst the FA could do is fine or sanction us. But that is unlikely, as tapping up happens all the time and is incredibly hard to prove. Yeah, as I said earlier in the video, guys, Tottenham have been on the other side of this years and years ago when Robbie Keane was seemingly tapped up by Liverpool and Frank Arneson, our sporting director, was tapped up by Chelsea. Levy tried to, put out similar things. It was when he just started as chairman. And the reality is it goes nowhere. Nobody cares. The Premier League are just like, get on with it, lads. Sort it out. Have a handshake. And that's the reality. Ryan says, Brennan Johnson leaked his phone number to Coy's Daniel on one of his recent sessions. Yeah, that's hilarious. Amazonian saying Daniel Levy is laughing at this amateur complaint. Exactly. Completely agree. Let's see what else we've got here. Darcian saying Forest thinking they can shut Levy up. Lol, it would be funny if we can get Morgan Gibbs-White for an even lower amount. Well, I don't think that's possible either. Good news for Forest fans. If it is, as I expect it to be, a genuine £60 million release clause that is triggerable during a certain period of time, which I imagine probably started yesterday and goes on for a week or something, then it will be £60 million. And that is money that Forest will get to reinvest in their team, which they should be doing. Ez says the big meeting at the end of the season must have been the board telling Levy, go and buy the correct players or leave. I guess that's to do with the rumours that, the change around in the boardroom, the leaving of Donna Cullen and the other guy whose name I forget might have been kind of the hierarchy at ENIC, like Joe Lewis saying to Daniel Levy, something has to change. We can't risk coming 17th again. Maybe that is why the changes are happening in terms of our transfer policy at this point and getting ready-made players for big money early in this window. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Really enjoyed. Once again, guys, thank you so much for jumping on this live stream with me. Once again, if you're not already a subscriber, please do press that subscribe button for daily Tottenham Hotspur transfer news and live streams. Also, please do give this video a like if you haven't already. The more likes we get on this video, the more fans will get to see it in their suggested videos. Matthew Ball sticking on some negativity about Daniel Levy. Levy is still Levy. A leopard can't change its spots. Levy out, ENIC out. How did you feel about it yesterday when it looked like we were going to spend £110 million in a day? Did you like that? Let me know about that, Matthew. Let's see what else you guys have got. Clip says Morgan Gibbs-White is a Champions League level player. Who can blame him for joining Spurs? Completely agree. I think he will want to play in the Champions League. And he probably was potentially interested in joining Man City too, but I think Man City just realistically, they've got too many players in that position. Nick Nicholson says, imagine if somebody else comes in and triggers the release clause and takes him from under Spurs' nose. That is a possibility now, I guess. let's see what happens. But either way, as a Forest fan, Nick, I'm not sure it's going to affect you. You're going to get your £60 million, whatever happens. What else? Micah says Nottingham Forest owner is such a thinking he can keep him to keep the fans happy. Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably, that's exactly why he's doing it, really. Clip says if the source is Romano, probably not much truth in it. He's all over the place these days. I think Fabrizio Romano is pretty reputable, to be honest. I really do. Krishna says Spurs are not supposed to know about the release clause. Glad Forest is stopping this illegal approach from dirty Spurs. Dirty Spurs. Listen, mate, it's got nothing to do with Spurs. If we know about a release clause, it's because the agent has tapped Spurs on the shoulder and gone, oh, by the way, Morgan Gibbs-White is available for 60 million in between these two dates. Any interest? And that's what has happened. Roy Parks says sour grapes as Forest is getting harsh criticism from other Premier League clubs. They need to save face and do the right thing and let Morgan Gibbs-White go as he wants to. Completely agree. Matthew Walker says, I think he's upset Spurs found out about the release clause. Thing is, they asked for 65 million plus and Standard Levy bid 60 mil. Turns out that was the release. It's market naivety. Yeah, really good point, Matthew. I wonder if there's any truth to that. Would love to know if there's any kind of, if you've got any kind of genuine evidence of that. Listen, guys, so many comments on this live stream. Really appreciate it from all of you. Really appreciate it. So good. Oliver243 says, this is so funny. For once, fans congratulate Levy and now Forest has just stopped it. That's kind of true, actually. Yeah, classic. As Ali Gold just wrote on a tweet, I just pray for one normal day at Tottenham. Chills with Lasour says, I heard Man City came for him and that he's open to a City move instead. Do you think Man City has something to do with this? I don't personally. I don't think that's got anything to do with it, because if Man City come in for him, then they'll just pay the 60 million as well. And that doesn't affect Marinakis any differently, does it? I'm just going on to Sky Sports, just looking for some more quotes, but no, nothing coming up. Wick's thought says, this is desperation. Seeing their stars get bought up and panicking. Release clauses created to bypass clubs. How do they think Morgan Gibbs-White would feel about this? Happy? I bet not. Listen, I'll give you an example of a release clause where it just does happen quickly. Jack Grealish had a release clause from Aston Villa for £100 million. Man City came in, triggered it, paid the £100 million, and then it's out of Aston Villa's hands. And in this case, I think it's going to be the same thing. It will be out of Marinakis and Nottingham Forest hands, and they don't like it. I think that's what's happening. I really think that's what's happening. Gisalo says, this is the last time Levy ever moves this quickly. Yeah. Will he be burnt and traumatized by this? David Walton says, Morgan Gibbs-White will have to win over Spurs fans. You still have a go at Brennan, even though he got you a trophy. Brennan Johnson is a raw talent, and I'll still say about Brennan Johnson, I think he's going to become an amazing player. He was our top scorer last season, but he just scored the same type of goal. I don't think that's his fault, though. I think that's the fault of Ange Postecoglou's tactics. He really just had Spurs playing in one particular way, getting to the byline, cutting it back to the back post. And Brennan Johnson is an elite finisher at the back post, and he's an elite crosser of the ball in between the keeper and the back line. Other than that, Brennan Johnson does have some work to do on his general play, but he's still incredibly young. Billy asked, do I have memberships? If you're talking about to my channel, yes, mate, in the description box below. Check it out. Only £1 a month. Cannon Fodder says, this is not how a chairman behaves. Alan Sugar ripping up Klinsmann's shirt. Yeah, that's true. Back in the day when Alan Sugar was chairman of Spurs, Jurgen Klinsmann said he wanted to move to Bayern Munich. And so Alan Sugar went in public with cameras around and ripped up. Did he burn the Jurgen Klinsmann shirt or wash his car with it or something? Bit embarrassing, to be honest, Sugar. He wasn't the best chairman of all time, Alan Sugar, but to be fair, he did get us out of financial strife. Let's see if there are any more comments. Yeah, Alex Sabanda, we talked about this a bit, but it says the worst was the owner storming onto the field to aggressively confront his own manager when the world was watching. Yep, completely embarrassing, as he is being again, I would suggest. There is some other news today, by the way, that Atletico Madrid have dropped out of their interest for QT Romero, but I did also see some reports that Real Madrid might be upping their interest back into QT Romero. So let's see what happens there. Nippleless Cage is not sure why so many are talking like Morgan Gibbs-White is a Maddison or Eze alternative. His best position is an attacking number 8, not a number 10. Ideally, he'd be playing with Bentancur or Bergvall in the midfield. Yeah, I like the look of that midfield potentially, but let's see if Spurs can actually get this deal over the line. I'm sure they will, but let's see what happens. Just trying to check out if there's any more news. Let's have a look here. The Athletic say Morgan Gibbs-White is still expected to leave Nottingham Forest, but the situation could now drag out, with Forest considering a legal complaint against Spurs. Okay, so that's not really news, I would say. Daniel Stanton says free Morgan Gibbs-White. Seren says Spurs are unfortunately the only club to have messed up a here we go back in the Willian days. Yeah, we gave Willian a medical at Tottenham Hotspur, and then Chelsea came in and stole him with him having done his medical. Jack says, I don't think Marinakis cares about what other teams and fans think. I think he cares what your fans think. That's why he's doing this. I don't think it's about what anyone else's fans think. I think it's about what your fans think. Alex Saban says, Gibbs-White and his agent obviously had some talk about game time, which is very crucial. If he goes to Man City, where will he play? Yeah, I think Tottenham is a better option for Gibbs-White in terms of game time. Absolutely. Oh, that's funny. Alex says, Barnaby, did you enjoy the Hackney Half Marathon? Saw you outside a pub, bottled, coming over and said hi. Oh, you should have said hi, mate. Yeah, I was there because my girlfriend, was doing the half. I enjoyed it because I was just drinking on the sidelines and holding up a silly sign. But thank you, mate. Yeah, come over and say hi next time. Spurs fan says, this has the owner trying to get an extra 10 to 15 million pounds out of us vibes. I don't think that'll be able to happen. I really don't. Chris says the deal is not off. They just want to squeeze more cash out of Spurs due to the poor handling of putting in a crap release clause in his contract. Yeah, and they won't be able to get any more cash out of Spurs or anyone else if that £60 million release clause is real, which I think it probably is. Anyway, guys, listen, really enjoyed this live stream. So many of you on here. Really great stuff. Once again, please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Please do press subscribe on this channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur news and transfer talk. And live streams. Really appreciate it, guys. And of course, if there's any more big news on this afternoon, I'm going to do a stand-up gig tonight in Brighton, so I'll be leaving probably around 5-ish. But if there's any more news before that, I will jump on to make sure to talk to you guys about it. But I imagine this is now going to bleed into next week, and we'll find out more about when Morgan Gibbs-White will join Spurs then. Have a great weekend. Cheers, guys.